Where legends breathe again. Eld myth. The world is not as we have mapped it. Beyond the edges of towns, deeper than the roots of the oldest forests, and beneath the surface of the blackest water, there exists another geography. It is charted not in ink, but in blood and whispered fear and stories told to keep children from wandering at dusk. This is the geography of punishment. Our journey tonight is not one of celebration, but of recognition. We will walk the borders of a specific and chilling realm, the domain of the transformed. Here, the line between humanity and monstrosity is not a wall, but a fragile, weeping membrane. It is a place where God's fate or profound transgression have taken the essence of a person and remade it into something else. A warning, a punishment, a prison of flesh and spirit. These are not beasts born of wilderness, but of us. Their terror is not in their alien nature, but in their dreadful familiarity. They carry the ghost of the human within the shell of the monster, a constant, agonizing reminder of what was lost. They haunt the spaces where our moral order frays. The lonely mountain pass, the stagnant bog, the birthbed stained with tragedy, the silent forest clearing under a hunter's moon. They are environmental consequences, made flesh and fang and stone. The fear they inspire is a complex one, part horror, part pity, part averted gaze. For to look too closely is to see the twisted reflection of our own potential for ruin. Over centuries, some of their stories have been softened, made palatable for campfire tales. But the oldest versions remain, coiled in the deepest strata of myth. They speak not of random evil, but of profound, irrevocable change. A change that waits, patient as stone, in the places we dare not go. To understand the monster, we must first meet the woman. And so we travel not to her stony lair, but to a place of sunlight and reverence. The coast of ancient Libya, where the sea is the color of lapis lazuli and the temple colonnades gleam white against the sky. Here, she was not Medusa the Gorgon, but a priestess, a devotee of Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Her domain was the sacred space of the temple, filled with the scent of olive oil and incense, the sound of chants, the cool texture of polished marble beneath bare feet. Her physical presence was not one of terror, but of awe-inspiring beauty. In the earliest fragments, she was not born a monster, but was renowned as the most beautiful of three sisters, her hair her crowning glory. Imagine the sight, a young woman of striking grace, moving with the solemn purpose of her office. Her eyes, later said to turn men to stone, once held only devotion. Her voice, later described as a hiss, once joined in hymns. She dwelled in an environment of order, piety, and divine protection, the very antithesis of the chaotic, corpse-strewn rocks she would later inhabit. Her behavior was defined by ritual and service. She was a keeper of secrets, a mediator between the human and the divine. The fear she inspired was not fear at all, but reverence. The offerings she received were of gratitude, not appeasement. Symbolically, she represented the sacredness of the feminine, a woman whose power and beauty were dedicated to a higher purpose, contained and sanctified within the walls of the temple. Then came the transgression. The oldest tales are stark. The god Poseidon desired her and violated her within Athena's own sanctuary. The temple's sanctity was shattered, and the punishment fell not upon the god but upon the priestess. Athena's wrath transformed Medusa's sacred beauty into a weapon of horrific defense. Her beloved hair became a nest of living vipers. Her gaze, which once sought divine insight, now brought instant, permanent petrification. Her temple became a cave, her hymns silence, her purpose to be a solitary monument to divine injustice. This is the hidden, censored core. The original myth is not a simple monster story. It is a story of divine jealousy, of a woman used as a pawn between gods and punished for a crime committed against her. The transformation made her a monster to be slain, obscuring her initial role as a victim. Her stone-turning gaze can be seen as the ultimate symbol of trauma, a power that freezes the world in a moment of horror, reflecting her own frozen life. She connects to our other beings as the archetype of the sacred transformed into the profane. Like them, her humanity was not erased, but imprisoned, warped into a form that forever warns of the gods' capricious cruelty. From the sun-baked temple, we ascend to a place of primal power and dark hospitality, the rugged highlands of Arcadia. This is the realm of Lycaon, a king whose name would become synonymous with the beast within. His environment was not a wild forest, but the very heart of human society, a palace. His court was a place of feasting, politics, and mortal ambition under the vast, star-strewn Greek sky. As a king, his physical presence commanded respect. He was a ruler, a father of 50 sons, a man at the peak of human authority. His behavior was meant to be governed by the sacred laws of Xenia, the divine duty of hospitality to strangers. Yet within this civilized shell festered a profound blasphemy. When the king of the gods, Zeus, visited his court in the guise of a weary traveler, Lycaon's response was not one of reverence, but of a twisted, testing cruelty. He served the god a foul feast, the dismembered flesh of a murdered child, perhaps his own son or a hostage. This act was more than murder. It was an attempt to desecrate the divine order itself. The fear here is not of a monster lurking outside, but of the monster seated on the throne. It is the fear of the corruption of power, of the civilized man who reveals a savagery deeper than any animal. Symbolically, Lycaon represents the hubris that seeks to drag the gods down to the level of human depravity. Zeus's punishment was a poetic, irreversible justice. He did not strike Lycaon dead. He transformed him. The king's fine robes melted into a coarse pelt of gray. His royal stature twisted into a lupin hunch. His articulate tongue thickened, capable only of howls. His civilized mind was flooded with raw, bestial instinct. He was expelled from his palace, from human society, and condemned to forever haunt the very wilderness he had metaphorically embodied. He became the first werewolf, not a cursed man, but a man made into the embodiment of his own savagery. The legacy is profound. Lycaon's transformation created a template for a specific kind of terror, the beast that walks on two legs until the moon reveals its true nature. It is a myth about the fragility of our humanity, warning that transgressions of a fundamental moral law can unravel our very form. He connects to our other beings as the archetype of the moral transgressor. His transformation is not a pity, but a fitting mirror. He is the civilized mask violently torn off, revealing the snarling truth beneath, a truth that now forever prowls the borderlands between the village firelight and the hungry dark. We now descend from palace and temple into a realm where earth and water fester together. The peat bogs, sea-swept coasts, and lonely northern isles of Scottish and Orcadian lore. This is the domain of the Nuckelavee, a being born not from divine punishment, but from a fusion of pure, rotten elemental malice. Its habitat is the liminal zone, the tidal flat where the sea vomits its refuse, the mist that rolls in from the northern sea to choke the land, the stagnant pools of a bog that bubbles with the gas of decay. To describe its physical presence is to invoke a nightmare of anatomy. It is a grotesque centaur-like fusion, but of no noble creatures. Its lower body is that of a powerful, skinless horse, its muscles, tendons, and black veins exposed and glistening. From its back sprouts the torso of a monstrous, muscular man, with arms so long its knuckles drag through the muck. Most horrifying is its head, a gigantic, misshapen thing with a gaping maw and a single, fiery eye that burns like a coal in its socket. The entire creature is devoid of skin. It is a pulsating, raw wound given motion. It moves with a sound of sucking mud and cracking joints. The Nuckelavee's behavior is one of pure, desolating hatred for all things living and dry. It is not a hunter that eats its prey, but a blight that spoils. It wilts crops with its breath, sickens livestock, and brings plague. Its touch causes the mortishing, a withering of the skin. It represents the antithesis of life and growth, the sea's corrosive salt, the land's choking rot, the disease that rides the fog. The fear it inspires is of ecological catastrophe made flesh. Yet there is a whisper in the oldest tales, a ghost in the machine of its form. Some say the rider and horse are not one being, but two, a damned, hateful human spirit fused eternally to a demonic steed as punishment for unspeakable acts in life. This is the hidden, almost forgotten kernel of humanity within the elemental horror. The Nuckelavee is not just a monster of the bog, it is a soul of the bog, a spirit so toxic it has become one with the landscape of decay. Its terror is absolute, but it is bound by one thing: fresh water. It cannot cross a running stream. This single vulnerability is a poignant symbol. The pure, life-giving element is the only barrier against this embodiment of stagnant, salty death. It connects to our theme as the archetype of the landscape of punishment, a creature that is both the jail and the prisoner, forever haunting the rotten, forgotten places it was made to embody. The air grows thick and humid, carrying the scent of frangipani and decay. We are in the moonlit villages and dense rainforests of Southeast Asia, where the boundary between life and death is as permeable as the monsoon mist. Here dwells the Pontianak, a spirit whose origin is a specific, visceral tragedy. She is not a random ghost, but a woman who died during childbirth or in pregnancy, her life and the life within her brutally cut short. Her domain is the banana tree, the empty house at the crossroads, the very site of her death, a place stained by life unfulfilled. Her physical presence, when she chooses to appear, is a cruel mockery of her lost life. She often manifests as a stunningly beautiful woman with long, jet-black hair, wearing a white funeral shroud. She moves with an unnerving, floating grace. But this beauty is a trap. To see her true form is to witness the horror of her death, a pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes and red, glowing pupils, her mouth filled with sharp fangs, and her back often bearing a gaping hole. The sound that announces her is not a growl, but the heart-wrenching wail of a grieving infant, which then twists into a piercing, predatory shriek. Her behavior is driven by a rage that is both personal and cosmic. She seeks vengeance, often against the men who wronged her or men in general, whom she lures with her beauty before eviscerating them with her long, sharp nails. She is also drawn to the smell of laundry, particularly children's, a haunting reminder of the maternal life stolen from her. The fear she inspires is multifaceted: fear of women's wrath, fear of untimely death, fear of the unresolved sorrow that can poison the afterlife. Symbolically, the Pontianak is the archetype of wronged feminine rage. She represents the societal and personal trauma surrounding childbirth and female mortality, transformed into a supernatural force. Her story was often softened into a simple vampire tale for outsiders, but her core is far more tragic and powerful. She is a victim who has become a predator, her love for her unborn child curdled into a hatred for the living. Her vulnerability is equally symbolic. A sharp nail driven into the nape of her neck can restore her to a kind, peaceful spirit, a metaphor for the release of her trapped, anguished energy. She connects deeply to our theme as a being transformed by the trauma of death itself, forever caught between the role of mother and monster, her humanity visible only in the depths of her sorrow and fury. Our final stop is another northern wilderness, but of a different character: the ancient, silent pine forests and high, lonely glens of the Scottish Highlands. Here, under a ceiling of stars so clear they feel like ice, the Baobhan Sith dances. She is not a ghost, but a fairy, a being of the She, older and stranger than any human soul. Her environment is the untouched, breathtaking beauty of the deep wilderness, a place of awe that hides a vampiric heart. Her physical presence is one of ethereal, otherworldly allure. She appears as a company of young women of unearthly beauty, dressed in long, flowing green gowns that seem woven from forest shadows and moss. They move with a hypnotic, graceful lightness, inviting travelers to join their dance. Their feet, however, are the hooves of a deer, often hidden by their gowns, the only immediate sign of their true nature. Their beauty is a lure, a glamour cast over a predatory void. Their behavior is a dark parody of hospitality and merriment. They ensnare lonely hunters or shepherds, drawing them into a wild, enchanting dance under the moon. But the dance does not end in revelry. As the music, often from a pipe only they can hear, reaches its crescendo, their fairy nature reveals itself. Their lovely fingers extend into sharp, talon-like claws. Their inviting smiles become fanged grimaces. They do not drink blood with gentle bites. They tear into their victim with ferocious abandon, draining them until only a husk remains, left on the dew-covered grass. The fear she represents is the danger of the beautiful, wild unknown. She is the seduction of the wilderness itself, promising companionship and ecstasy, but delivering only consumption. She is not driven by vengeance or punishment, but by a fairy's alien hunger. Reverence for her took the form of iron nails in pockets, rowan wood crosses, and a deep-seated taboo against engaging with beautiful strangers in the lonely places after dark. Symbolically, the Baobhan Sith is the archetype of the predatory glamour. She represents the ancient understanding that the most beautiful faces in the wild places may hide the deadliest intentions. Her hidden deer hooves connect her to the animal kingdom and the untamed forest, a reminder that her beauty is a natural trap, like the orchid that mimics a female insect. She completes our set as the being whose humanity was never present to begin with. She is the wilderness personified, not a transformed human, but a force that wears a human-like mask to feed. Her terror is in her perfect, impersonal predation, a beautiful void in a green gown, dancing forever in the starlit clearings where humans are merely temporary guests. Silence returns to the forest clearing. The last echo of the fairy pipe fades into the sigh of the wind through the pines. The stone gaze of a forgotten gorgon stares eternally across a barren, wave-lashed shore. In the bog, bubbles rise slowly through the peat, releasing the slow breath of decay. A white shrift flutters, abandoned, on a branch in the silent jungle. We are left in the landscapes themselves. These are not backdrops, but active participants. They are the canvases upon which these transformations were painted, and they bear the scars. Walk now through these empty spaces. Feel the oppressive, salt-heavy air of the coastal cave. Stand at the edge of the stagnant mere, where the water is the color of old blood and the mist refuses to lift. Look up at the vast, indifferent arc of stars above the highland glen, so cold and clear they feel like judgment. These are the liminal zones, the borders between town and wild, sea and land, life and death, sanity and madness. They are the physical manifestations of the moral and emotional thresholds our beings crossed. Here, time moves differently. It is the slow time of stone eroding, of peat accumulating over centuries, of roots cracking ancient foundations. It is the waiting time. The air in these places is thick with memory and potential. A shape might move at the edge of vision. A sound might not be the wind. These landscapes are dormant but not dead. They are charged with the residue of the stories they hold, sleeping lightly, ready for the next traveler to stumble into the old tale. 5 creatures, 5 landscapes, one profound and unsettling truth. They are all mirrors, cracked, distorted, and terrifying mirrors, but reflections of us nonetheless. They do not represent external evils, but internal possibilities made flesh and set loose in the world. Medusa and Lycaon show us the mirror of divine justice, a punishment that fits the crime so perfectly it becomes a prison of form. One sacred beauty becomes a weapon, the other's savage heart becomes his skin. The Pontianak and the Baobhan Sith show us the mirror of primal fear. One reflects the terror of feminine rage and mortal trauma, the other the terror of nature, beautiful, indifferent hunger. The Nuckelavee stands apart and yet completes the set. It is the mirror of the landscape's own malevolence, a creature that is the environment itself, punishing all who enter. The shared domain is not a physical place, but a psychological one, the border of the self. Each creature marks what happens when a fundamental boundary is catastrophically crossed. The boundary of sanctuary, of hospitality, of life and death, of societal order, of humanity itself. Their transformations are graphic metaphors for psychological states. The petrifying gaze of trauma, the bestial fury of suppressed rage, the rotting consumption of guilt, the draining allure of obsession, the hollow glamour of deceit. Humans imagine these beings repeatedly because they are narrative containers for our deepest anxieties, about the gods, about our own darkness, about the cruelty of nature and fate. They externalize the internal, giving a face and a form to the shapeless fears that swirl in the collective unconscious. They are maps of danger, but also tragic figures. In their cursed, immutable forms, we see the ultimate loss of control, the finality of a mistake that cannot be unmade. They are the oldest cautionary tales, written not on parchment, but on the very fabric of the world we fear to explore. The torchlight of the ancient world has faded, but the shadows it casts still dance on our walls. These creatures did not die with the belief in them. They evolved. They migrated from folklore to the pages of novels, the frames of film, the polygons of video games. The fear they once inspired has been metabolized into fascination. Medusa has been reclaimed, analyzed, turned into a symbol of feminist rage and survivorhood. Her monstrous form is now often a shield, her story a critique of patriarchal divinity. Lycaon's curse birthed an entire genre, the werewolf, a staple of horror that endlessly explores the conflict between civilization and the beast within. The Pontianak and her kin populate Southeast Asian horror cinema, their stories updated to reflect modern anxieties but retaining the core of tragic vengeance. The Baobhan Sith inspires elegant, deadly fae and fantasy epics, her deer-hoofed elegance a template for otherworldly danger. Yet in this translation, something is often lost. The modern lens tends to psychologize, to make the monster a misunderstood victim or a cool power fantasy. The ancient environmental terror diminishes. We forget that Medusa was the cave, that the Nuckelavee was the plague-ridden bog, that the Baobhan Sith was the seductive, deadly loneliness of the forest itself. They become characters, not forces of nature. This evolution from object of terror to object of fascination is telling. It signifies a shift from believing in the monster outside to recognizing the monster within. We no longer leave offerings at the bog's edge. We play as the werewolf in a game, exploring that bestial power from a safe distance. Our need for them has changed, but not disappeared. They remain our most powerful metaphors, now used to explore identity, trauma, marginalization, and the parts of ourselves we keep chained, but can hear howling in the dark. What then do these 5 transformed beings ultimately tell us? They tell us that our oldest stories are not about conquering the dark, but about mapping it. They are about giving names and shapes to the formless chaos that lies beyond the firelight, and more terrifyingly, within our own hearts. They speak of humanity's attempt to negotiate with the uncontrollable. Nature, death, fate, the gods, our own base instincts. They represent the awe that curdles into terror. The beauty of the priestess, the power of the king, the fertility of the mother, the wildness of the fairy, all twisted into forms that warn. Do not trespass. Do not break the sacred law. Do not think you are more than you are. They are the embodied consequences of a universe that operates on rules far older and sterner than our own. Yet in their tragedy there is a strange comfort. They create order. By defining the monster, we define the human. By charting the land of punishment, we map the safe path. Their stories are the fences we built in the mind, long before we built them in the world. We still need these stories, not because we believe in the literal monster in the bog, but because we understand the metaphorical one. In an age of clinical explanations, they remind us that some truths are best understood through myth, through symbol, through a shiver in the spine on a lonely road at night. They keep alive the language of awe, of consequence, of the sacred and the profane. They remind us that transformation is always possible, and not all transformations are for the better. So let us step back from the border. Let the mist close over the bog. Let the forest canopy swallow the moonlight. Let the waves smooth the footprints from the cursed shore. The geography of punishment remains. It exists in the quiet moments when the modern world's hum fades, and you are left with the older sounds, the wind, the water, the creak of a tree. It is present in the chill that has nothing to do with temperature, in the instinct to glance over your shoulder on an empty path. The priestess still waits in her temple of stone, not of marble. The king still prowls the high places on padded paws. The rotten heart of the bog still beats a slow, wet rhythm. The lament for a lost child still echoes in the tropical night. The dance still continues in the clearing, waiting for a new partner. We have not slain them. We have simply learned to look without seeing. We have paved over their habitats with concrete and logic, but the soil beneath is still the old soil, steeped in memory and myth. They have retreated, not vanished. They are in the peripheral vision of our world, in the stories we half remember, in the primal, atavistic fear that surfaces in dreams. They are the keepers of the old truths, the truths written in transformation and terror. So the next time you stand at the edge of a lonely place and the hair on your neck stirs without a breeze, listen. Breathe in the scent of damp earth and ancient stone, and know that the map is not complete. The bestiary is not closed. Some pages are still being written in the dark by a light that is not ours. The journey ends where it began, at the border. The choice to cross has always been and will always be yours. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.